Hi chess friends, this is King's Executor covering round 10 of the Tata Steel Tournament 2013 in Wijk. And well, my prediction of Magnus Carlsen being the big favorite to win this tournament is just emphasized with his lead with 8 points out of 10, and second place would be 6.5 points out of 10. So he's clearly leading and was and still is the favorite to win this tournament in my opinion. In this game against Erwin L'Ami, Magnus Carlsen opened with e4, and now we see c6, which is clearly going into Caro-Kann. And really the best move in this position is d4. And after d5 you have a choice between the advanced variation, which you can look at in one of the round 1 videos out of the group C, I guess, or B, I don't know. I have it in my playlist of the Tata Steel tournament, which white won very nicely and black played too passively. But in this game we have the classical one of the main lines with a knight to d2, which might look funny to block this bishop here. But if you play knight c3 or knight to d2, doesn't make any difference, because black is going to take this pawn and you grab this pawn. So if you play knight d2 or knight c3 in this position, doesn't make any difference. The pawn is taken and you recapture here. One difference could be if black denies to take the pawn with e6, then you might have the possibility to play c3 or even c4 at the right moment. So knight d2, the pawn was taken and recaptured. Bishop f5 with tempo to prepare e6. Of course the bishop doesn't want to stay inside a blockaded pawn formation here. It doesn't want to stay blockaded behind the pawn formation, so it gets out. Knight g3 attacking the bishop, and bishop g6. And now there are different main lines to play against this bishop. Magnus Carlsen played bishop c4 here, but a very standard main line here goes knight f3, eyeing the e5 square to get this bishop, and knight d7 here to cover it. And well, if you really want to nab this bishop with all possibilities you have up your sleeve, well, knight h4 isn't that great. That allows e5, liberating black's position. And if you take this bishop, we recapture immediately, compensating black for the doubled pawns and the loss of the bishop pair with this open, semi-open rook file here. And now if the pawn is would be taken here, queen a5 check, bishop d2, queen e5 check, queen e2, castles, and in this position black is fine, I think. With the open lines here, the safe black king, the nice development of black, this position should be equal already. So in such a standard Caro-Kann situation, h4 would be a try. Afterwards h6 to preserve the bishop, and now the bishop would be kicked. Bishop h7, and now this bishop used 1, 2, 3, well, 4 moves. 4 moves are invested to move this bishop. And now we want to exchange this bishop with bishop to d3 for a piece that only moved once. And white is threatening to take this bishop and to dislocate the rook here. So this bishop is taken in the main line, queen recaptures, and the queen gets developed with tempo. Queen c7 taking the f4 square out of white's development plan. Black is preparing e6, and so these dark squares here need to be covered. And afterwards the bishop probably comes to d6 or e7. And after castles, e6, maybe c4, knight g to f6, c5 to take away this square from the bishop. Doesn't make too much sense because the knight can hop into d5 then. And now in this position the question is this pawn a strength or a weakness in white's position? Because this pawn could become easily weak pawn. This knight is badly placed, but it's covering this pawn, and if you want to redeploy this knight somewhere, well, then this pawn really could become a liability to a white. And this is the feature of the main lines in the Caro-Kann. But in this position, not knight f3, but bishop c4 was employed by Magnus Carlsen. So this in this position, if e4 and c6 is played, well, black is saying to white, I'm playing the Caro-Kann against you, and the Caro-Kann is one of the most solid openings to black and has a really big draw percentage. And this is why as a draw weapon this opening is employed. Okay, let's go through the moves again. We have pawn takes pawn, knight takes pawn, bishop f5, bishop g6, and now knight bishop c4 by Carlsen. e6, and now you see why this opening is so solid. The bishop is out of the pawn chain, and the pawn, well, if you can describe it as a pawn chain, these pawn blockaders here really stop d5 for the time being. They block out the light squared bishop, and they give room for this bishop here to cover the dark squares. So this opening makes a lot of sense, but it can lead to very dull positions for black. But some may like this, aggressive players might not. Knight 1 to e2, b5, gaining a tempo. This move might gets a queen side, a space on the queen side, but it can be weakening as well with later moves such as a4. Bishop b3, bishop d6, knight f4. You see, taking this bishop is a thematic idea for white in this line, but it's really better to be taken by a strong knight on g6 rather than being blockaded on c8. Well, this is what black might argue. Bishop takes this knight, so after recapturing here, these dark squares look a little bit weak. Knight f6. castles, castles, and c4. a4 would have been the normal move here, attacking a more central pawn here with a more offside pawn, and preserving this pawn for the center afterwards. But Carlsen maybe tried to go off the beaten track here and to surprise his opponent. c4 takes, queen b6, attacking the pawn, queen d2 covering it, and backing up this bishop. You don't want to have your pieces unprotected. This leads to tactics for the opponent. So you have to cover them move by move. Rook d8, pressurizing the isolani. Rook fd1, knight bd7, rook ac1. And now you see, by giving up the c pawn, black gets control of the d5 square. Bishop d6, the bishop was attacked. Knight f6, attacking the bishop again, and now the c5 square is available to white's bishop. Queen b8, f3, well, knight to e4 could be exchanged, of course, but black wouldn't do this, because black would exchange a nice knight for a bad knight here. So to reinforce the idea of exchanging this bad knight, f3 makes sense. h6, knight e2, knight d7, attacking this bishop on c5, which you don't want to give up for a knight for no reason. But this time the d6 square is covered by the queen, so bishop a3. And now black seems to have a strong freeing break here with e5. And this looks like a simplifying a move, exchanging pieces in the center and opening up tactical opportunities for black's rook. b3, a very strong move with ideas of bishop to b2 here, freeing up this queen to move, so there is no pressure on the b pawn. Queen b6, reinforcing the pressure in the center. Knight c3, knight 7 to f6, bishop c5, attacking the queen, queen c7, protecting the pawn, and this pawn was taken. Well, you have to calculate such moves, because now the semi-open file is open. Queen takes e5, bishop d4, queen e7, rook e1, queen d6. And now look at white's pieces. Really harmonious in from the white side, and in addition to the, or in comparison to the black side, black really couldn't manage to equalize yet. So the e5 square here, e5 move by black didn't help him much. Queen f2, getting out of the indirect threats here. Knight took here on c3. Well, in this position you have the two bishops as white, and early on in the game, and even in the early middle game, the knights kinda compensate for the opposite double bishop pair. And if you start to simplify the position, that makes the bishop pair even stronger. So keeping this knights in the center makes you almost equally strong with the bishop pair from your opponent. So you rather have to get the rooks into the game here as black. That is my opinion. But it's difficult really to say how to do it because white is simply very active now, and black hoped to simplify down the position, but I don't think that's the right way to go when the opponent has a bishop pair here. Knight d5, bishop e5, queen a3, and h4. The rule is, if you control the center, and it seems that you do as white here, and there's no pressure from black in the center, then it's time to attack the enemy king. So this is a principal approach here. f6, bishop d4, king h7. Now you see the bishop is not only indirectly looking at this diagonal, but also pressurizing this pawn. So this is why the bishop pair is so strong. The bishops can work on both flanks at the same time, and the centralized knights some moves before kinda equalized this feature of the position. And now this knight was taken. An interesting decision. And black took with the rook. And now we get a pawn. Well, if we take this with the pawn, then clearly white's rook penetrates onto the 7th rank. And now you see the importance of this mighty bishop in the middle of the board, threatening here to take this pawn simply. So when I talked about this bishop looking down this diagonal, you might have thought, well, there is a brick wall against it. But chess is not as stubborn as our mind, and it's kind of fluid. So in this position, black took with the rook to not allow this pressure on the 7th rank here, but this loses a pawn, of course. And now we exchange the bishop pair for a pawn, and of course active pieces and better placed pieces here. Black is struggling in this position. After queen to b4, rook c4 with tempo, queen d6, bishop c5 attacking queen, and pawn here, queen d8. Well, in this position, if the bishop moves out of this diagonal, okay, then the queen could come to b6, maybe forcing even an exchange of queens, simplifying the position, simplifying down the position even more. And rook d8 is a clear threat to simplify the position. So, well, white could have taken this pawn here, but after that this rook comes into the game, and you don't want to give your opponent counterplay even for a pawn. King h2 is a move to step out of any simplifying mechanisms for black. a6, bishop e7, queen b8, check, queen g3, and now white even allows to simplify down this position, because the king gets more into the center with this exchange, and you see there are problems for black. We have opposite side bishops, opposite colored bishops, and in this in such a position, attacking and initiative is the order of the day. And now, as before, the rook threatens to come to the 7th rank, and this pawn could be threatened afterwards, because this pawn is pinned. So rook a7 to cut that out for the moment, rook c6, and the pawn on a6 still is a weakness. a5, bishop c5, attacking the rook. The rooks are doubled, bishop e3, cutting rook d2 out of black's agenda. And now the rooks could be exchanged here, but Magnus is not interested. Rook e6, king f2, rook d5, and rook c3. Bishop e8, bishop d2. Indirectly looking at the a5 pawn. Well, a4 was played. Why give up that that pawn so fast and not keeping it there, and well, a4 after exchanges here allow white to have a passed pawn here. So why helping white with this? Well, after exchanges, black still has pressure on the a pawn and would be forced to play a4 sooner or later anyway. So a4. Now Magnus exchanges rooks to have the initiative and a simplified position. So you have a more simple position, but still your initiative as white. That makes sense. b4, bishop b5, bishop e3, cutting out rook to e2 here. h5, rook c7, again looking at the 7th rank. King g6, rook a7, rook d5, and king g3. Rook d3, bishop c5, and now Carlsen allowed rook a3, but in return he has bishop f8. And now you see what I mean with opposite colored bishops and the initiative. So this is not at all a draw. With heavy pieces on the board, opposite colored bishops mean rather the possibility to attack or even mate the king rather than a draw. This is what many weak players get wrong. If these pieces are out of the game, then you could claim a draw. And now after king f4, the black king is in trouble. And if black would play a mistake like rook takes g2, of course the rook is falling. And a random move like rook b2 threatening, no, it's not a threat really, now the pawn is covered, but the threat is takes. King h6 is the only square. Well, you could make it even this way. Check, and the bishop falls, but there's even mate possibilities here. So after king f4, black felt compelled to move his king to h7. The rook took the pawn, and now we exchanged this pawn for this white pawn here. But, well, who's got the better position here? King h8, king f5, rook c2, king takes f6, a3. Well, looks like a dangerous pawn. In this position, the engines like queen, bishop to c5 to decrease the rook's activity, and after a2, bishop d4, covering the queening square. Magnus went another route here with rook a7, a2, g3. Well, in this position, black doesn't want to exchange this backward pawn for this more valuable pawn here. So a2 and now g3 to cut. Rook takes g2 out of the question. And now check, king g5. And now look at these pawns. So you might have thought 15 moves ago or 10 moves ago that this position is a draw, but as I said, with such bishops, initiative is the key. King g8 attacking the bishop, bishop c5 now, and bishop a6. After bishop d4, rook d6, and bishop a1, the pawn is blocked. Well, and if the rook attacked that bishop, we get this bishop here. And if you compare white's pawns with black's pawns, you might understand why Erwin L'Ami resigned in this position. So a nice game. Magnus Carlsen managed to win against a solid Caro-Kann, and he outplayed his opponent again. Well, I'm really interested if anyone manages to come close to Magnus's points, which are leading clearly with 8 points out of 10 rounds. And well, I think my prediction is now being revealed as the actual outcome of the tournament. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please subscribe, comment and like, and we shall meet again next round, and I'll be back.